Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I am reading in April. You may or may not know, I am hosting a readathon in April called Alcott April, in which we are celebrating Louisa May Alcott and her works. So some of the books that I have here are books that I am reading for that. I'm not going to be following all of the prompts. All of the co-hosts did submit an optional prompt. And in addition to that, we have a group read. So I will be reading my prompt, the group read, and probably dipping into some of the other prompts, but I'm not totally sure yet. The group read is The Inheritance, and this is a tiny little book. So if you're debating whether or not you could maybe join us for Alcott April, I hope you'll pick this one up because it's really, really short. We are going to be having discussions on my Discord for this, in addition to having a live discussion at the end of the month. I'll share the announcement video so that way you can check that out. It has all the details there. But this is, I think, more of a romance, and I'm really, really looking forward to reading this one. We're also watching the film adaptation of this together as well. My prompt for the readathon was to read a nonfiction either about Louisa May Alcott or the time period in which she lived and wrote. So I have this book that my mother-in-law gave me a couple of years ago, and I've been itching to pick it up, and that's Marmee and Louisa by Yves Laplante. And so this is the story of Louisa May Alcott and her mother. And if you've read Little Women, you know all about Marmee. So I'm kind of wondering how much Louisa May Alcott's mother really inspired the character of Marmee. I'm hoping that she did. So I'm really, really excited to read this one. But I did find out that the author of House of Dreams, Liz Rosenberg, I read that book about Ella Montgomery last year for Montgomery May. She has written one about Louisa May Alcott also. And so I'm really tempted to pick that one up as well, but we'll see whether or not time allows for that. Another one of the prompts is to read one of Louisa May Alcott's short stories. And if you didn't know, Project Gutenberg has a ton of Louisa May Alcott's works available digitally. And so I have found quite a few of her short stories / novellas. They're kind of in that length that I'm gonna kind of see which one tickles my fancy, but I hope to tackle at least one of those this month as well. I also have a lot of buddy reads going on in the month of April. What else is new, right? I always have a lot of buddy reads. I feel like I buddy read about 75% of what I read. So Dia and I were planning to read Bottolino by Umberto Eco in March, and that did not work out. That book was just not for us. I read the first chapter and I was like, I don't think I want to read this. And I told Dia about some of the issues I was having with some of the content, and she's like, yeah, I'm not even gonna bother. So instead we decided to pick up 5 stories by Willa Cather. This has 5 of her short stories in it. This is like, I do not like this cover. Anyways, so we decided to pick this up. We're doing 1 short story a week. So we did start this in March, but we're continuing it in April. For my in-person book club, I'm so excited. We're gonna be reading Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And there's a couple of ladies in our group that have never read Jane Austen. And so I am really, really excited for them to experience her for the first time. But the vast majority of us have read Jane Austen and have read Pride and Prejudice multiple times, including myself. This was actually the first Jane Austen I read, which I think is probably pretty common. I saw the Keira Knightley version of this movie when I was in high school and had never read Jane Austen before, and it kicked off me reading all of her works within the following year in high school and then continuously reading them over the years. So I love Pride and Prejudice. It's either my second or third favorite Austen. I love it so much. So I'm really, really excited to read this one during the month of April. I have a classics TBR for the year. You may have seen that video. I'll link it in case you haven't. But the classic that I've chosen for the month of April is Moby Dick by Herman Melville. This is kind of my big scary classic of the year, and that this book just intimidates me a bit just because of its reputation, and it is kind of big as well. I tried to read it last year, but I was really, really overscheduled, and I only read 2 chapters and then was like, now's not the time. I can't do this right now. I just have too much going on. So I am doing this in April. I am planning to extend this book probably over about 6 weeks. So that way it doesn't feel like I'm reading like a quadrillion chapters from it a day. I think if I wanted to finish it over the course of the month, I'd have to read 5 chapters a day. So my plan is to read around 3 chapters a day. I know there were several of you who were potentially interested in reading Moby Dick with me. If you still are, let me know in the comments and I can set up a Voxer group so that way we can chat about it as we read it, or I can set up a channel on my Discord to chat about it if that's easier for you. So if you're interested in reading this with me, feel free to jump in. I'm also reading kind of a little bit of a chunky Russian classic. It's a little over 500 pages, so it's not as chunky as a lot of Russian classics, but a little bit on the chunky side. And that's Oblomov by Ivan Goncharov. So I didn't know anything about this book, and I picked it up at McKay's because of the description on the back. I have to read it to you. It says, Oblomov lies in bed pondering one vital, earth-shattering question. Should he get up? Thus we meet one of the greatest creations in all Russian literature, Oblomov, good-natured and indolent, with the mind of a reasonable man and the ambition of a giant sloth, wearily reclining while a procession of visitors plead with him to change his ways. I saw that and I'm like, I gotta read this at some point. So I'm really excited because I'm gonna be reading this with Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads and Christy from Christy Liz Dostoevsky in Space, and I'm really excited to read this with them. This may continue into May as well, but I feel more confident that I could finish this in the month of April than Moby Dick. Another book that I am reading with Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads is T. Kingfisher's Nettle and Bone. So we read What Moves the Dead together in February, kind of on a whim. We read it for the We Love Jenny readathon because Jenny loved T. Kingfisher. And so we read that together, absolutely loved it. It was like perfection. And then we both were like, oh my gosh, what Feast at Night? The sequel came out in March. And so we put a hold on it in our library, and our holds came in at the exact same time in March. It wasn't supposed to come in until like April or May. Like the hold was forever long, but there was enough people that passed that we got it at the same time, and we read that one in March. So we're like, we want to read more T. Kingfisher. So I have Nettle and Bone for my library. So that's going to be our next foray into T. Kingfisher. I think that this one probably has some horror elements as well, but this is rooted in fairy tales. I don't really know which one. I don't really know much about it, and I'm totally cool with that because I like to not know too much going into books, especially ones that are this short. It'd be really easy for me to spoil myself, and I'm not interested in that. I'm also going to be continuing in the memoirs of Lady Trent, which starts with A Natural History of Dragons. I've been reading this with my friend Whitney Drew. We actually read the first book last summer with our book club, and we wanted to continue in the series together, but we were reading through the Stormlight Archive. So once we finished that, we continued on with Tropic of Serpents. So this month we're going to be reading book 3, which I can't remember what it's called, and I don't own a physical copy of, but it'll be up here on the screen. So I'm excited to continue on with that because I really love Isabella. I think she's so much fun. For my Reader Rid project in the month of April, I have been using the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge by Chantel Reads All Day. So the book that I have for the month of April is Caddy Woodlawn because the prompt is a redheaded protagonist. And interestingly enough, on the cover, she looks maybe red-ish, like auburn, but she's totally a redhead. I like that. I think it might even say, it doesn't say on the back, but I looked it up. She is a redhead. So this is the book that I've chosen for this prompt. It's one that's been sitting on my shelves for years and years and years, and neither Claire or I have ever had an inkling to pick it up. So I need to read this or make room on my shelf for other middle grades. I've had quite a few people tell me that they love this book. So I have high hopes for it because it's a classic middle grade for a reason, but we'll see. Those are my reading plans for April that are like definitive, definitely reading these books, but there's a few things that I don't know yet. Like I'm part of Victoria from a Musical Bookworms Patreon, and at the time of me filming this, they've not yet chosen the book for April. So I don't know what that is. That'll probably, it's supposed to be a classic, so that'll probably be on this list somewhere as well. So there will probably be other things maybe that I pick up here or there during the month. I also haven't chosen the book that I'm going to vlog for my patrons yet. So there will be a couple other books that might be on my wrap up that are not in this TBR, but this is the current plan. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. What are you reading in April? What book are you the most excited about reading? I hope that you're able to join us for Alcott April. But if you're not, I'd love to hear if there's any other readathons that you're participating in, because there's always so many good ones happening on BookTube. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.